welcome to episode number 066 of Something Else with Aria and Not KJ. My name is Aria, joined as always by Not KJ. And today, as most weeks, we're going to be talking about Mid-South Wrestling back to December 2nd, 1982. We'll dive into all that, including the wacky story behind the title of this week's show, Ping Pong Evolution. Jesus Christ, that sounds really awful now that I say it out loud. I swear there's a funny joke behind it, at least what I think is a funny joke. We'll get to that in about 20 to 30 minutes, I guess. So I guess let's start with a programming note. Now, I believe the vast majority, if not all of my listeners, are from the United States. If you're not, this is probably going to be more for you anyway. But as you're listening to this show typically drops on Thursdays. Next Thursday is Thanksgiving here in the United States. I've already spoken with Stevie J. So at the moment, there will be new shows next week, both Something Else and Smoky Mountain Rewatch Along Project. However, if Stevie messages me and says, hey, you know what? Let's skip a week. Let's just take off Thanksgiving, come back the following week. That's fine. So that's what will end up happening. So check out if there suddenly isn't an episode next week. That's why. If it does drop, it should be dropping early. So it'll probably be up on Wednesday and go from there. And actually, I intend to record not only this week's two shows, but next week's two shows before I go to bed tonight. And it is currently 6:52 p.m. on the East Coast on Sunday, November 12th. Now, of course, like what happens every time I record shows, more than a week in advance, something will more than likely happen in the world of wrestling. I think the last time we did this, where I recorded episodes far in advance, was when CM Punk got fired. And that was that fun episode where I also got my podcasting equipment that week. So the first 10 minutes of the show or whatever it was me talking with my new podcasting equipment about CM Punk and then sending it to a pre-recorded episode where I was just using my headset and Zoom. So I guess we'll see what happens. Hopefully, tap on wood, we can get through Thanksgiving without anything major in the wrestling business happening. But yeah, we'll see how that goes, shall we? So this week we're talking about Mid-South Wrestling, December 2nd, 1982, from the Irish McNeil Boys Club in Shreveport, Louisiana. Now, I should mention, and we're going to bring this up later because there's a few obvious things. This show was taped on Thanksgiving Eve, 1982. The last Superdome shows we've discussed was on Thanksgiving, 1982. There are things that happen on the Superdome show that in TV time happened 2 weeks ago, but because in real time, in real lifetime, they don't happen until tomorrow. You can't spoil it for your audience. You can't tip your hat and, say what's going to happen. However, and we'll point out some of these things here a little bit later on. However, if you pay attention to what gets talked about and what gets said, you'll actually put two and two together and figure out what happens. But for now, let's go to the intro of the show. It's with Boyd Pierce and Sweaty Bob Roop. Why is he sweaty? It's because that match he had last week was taped about 30 minutes before he had to sit down and do commentary for this week's show. Well, let's go to that. They're also going to send it to a skit with Bill Watts donating some money.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of Mid-South Wrestling Television. I'm Boyd Pierce, your host, and we have a lot of exciting action coming up. The Mid-South Tag Team Champions are here in the person of Ted DiBiase and Matt Bourne. They'll be taking on the popular duo of Mr. Olympia and Iron Mike Sharp. Stagger Lee is on this week's card. Also, King Cobra takes on the Ugandan warrior Kamala. There'll be a lot of action, but, you know, through the years I've known Cowboy Bill Watts for a long, long time. In the ring and out of the ring, a fine personality, as you all know. But Bill always has time. A busy man seems like that's the one they call on. He always has time for the underprivileged children, the one that doesn't have the things a lot of us do, the blind, the people suffering from multiple sclerosis, the handicapped, a great person inside the ring and out. We're going to show you Cowboy Bill Watts and the Shreveport American Legion as they make a donation presentation to the Irish McNeil Boys Club here in Shreveport. Let's watch it right now.
Recently in Shreveport, at the Shreveport Municipal Auditorium, there was a very special wrestling program held, and the proceeds, or part of the proceeds from this program, went to aid Irish McNeil Sports for Boys, a very worthy organization indeed. And responsible for a great deal of that were the people at the American Legion. I'd like to introduce some people here to you. Mr. Jack Forsyth, who is commander of the Low McFarland Post number 14 of the American Legion here in Shreveport, and Mr. Jerry Smith, president of the board of Irish McNeil's Sports for Boys, and of course a man who needs no introduction, Mr. Cowboy Bill Watts of Mid-South Sports.
Well, thank you, Reese. As everybody knows, we tape our weekly television program at the Irish McNeil Boys Club. And watching their operation over the period of time we've been here, we've seen what a tremendous job they've done in giving and providing a place for the young children and the teenage and older people to work out, mostly in boxing. But it's provided a place and a way of keeping a lot of kids off the street. And this place is run by public donation and funding. And talking to Jerry Smith, you know, we realized they had a need. Jack Forsyth, the post commander of the Low McFarland Post, who is the promoter of Mid-South Wrestling in Shreveport, when I explained the problem to him, he immediately took the ball and went to his committee. And they just said, let's get together and hold an event and designate the funding that the Shreveport Legion ordinarily gets from that event to the Boys Club, and Mid-South decided to come up with a gift too. And I have our checks enclosed here together, and the Legion's check was for $500, and Mid-South has donated $1,000. That makes me really proud to give this to Jerry Smith now and for Jack and the Legion Post and myself.
Bill, we'd like to thank you and Jack both for everything y'all have done for the Sports of Boys. It's been a great help to us, and we certainly appreciate this. This will go a long ways to helping some boy.
And Bill, I'd like to say it's always a pleasure working with Mid-South. As you know, Low McFarland Post 14, our motto is working for community services and children and youth.
Thank you, gentlemen, and thank you, wrestling fans.
A fine presentation there, and we're grateful for men such as Cowboy Bill Watts in our profession.
Well, Boyd, let me interrupt you for a second. Up to this moment, I didn't think there was anything that I agreed with Bill Watts about, but I have to admit that that's a class act. I mean, underprivileged children need all the help they can get, and that's just a real classy way to behave.
And that's the voice from our guest commentator of the week, Bob Roop. We'll tell about his qualifications later. Right now, the opening event is in the ring. Let's go for the introduction.
Now, if you are a regular listener to the show, do you really need to hear Bob Roop's qualifications? Again, he's a AAU amateur wrestling champion. He just went on multiple vacations because he is an independent contractor. He was up visiting his parents in Michigan, recently. And now he's back here in Mid-South. And I am 100% sure this time. I know we've, mentioned this earlier and I was wrong, but I'm 100% sure Bob Roop never wrestles again here on Mid-South Wrestling Television. Now, as we say that, I'm sure in 2 weeks, Bob Roop will win the North American title. However, at the moment, I'm 100% sure this is it for Bob Roop as a wrestler. Enjoy last week's match. Whether or not you did, it's irrelevant because that's it. Love Bob Roop. I think he's a lot better commentator than he gets credit for when you hear other people talking about it. However, Bob's done. Okay, so now not wanting to put too fine of a point on this here, but donezo. All right. So this week, Ted DiBiase and Matt Bourne, the Mid-South Tag Team Champions, go 2-on-2 against Mr. Olympian Iron Mike Sharp. Plus, Stagger Lee is here. Plus, Kamala's going to wrestle King Cobra. And I quote, a lot of action will occur here today on Mid-South Wrestling. Now, of course, we're used to Boyd putting over Bill Watts like the second coming of Christ, because, if you're going to put somebody over like the second coming of Christ, it may as well be the guy who signed your paychecks. Well, this week, we had one of those moments where it's like, is it really a magnanimous gesture if you go and talk about it on your television screen? But it's still a very nice gesture, a very nice thing that he's doing. Bill Watts and the American Legion have teamed up to donate $1,500 to the Irish McNeil Boys Club to help keep it running. Now you could argue and say, hey, if they needed this funding to help run and they didn't get it, well, the Irish McNeil Boys Club may close and Mid-South may have to find somewhere else to tape their shows at, somewhere that's less, convenient for them or what have you. So in a lot of ways, hey, they paid $1,000 so they could keep running shows at the boys club here. But hey, still at the end of the day, it's a nice gesture. It's a nice thing to have done, and we'll give Bill Watts a clap on the back. Now, on the other hand, like I said, how charitable is it really if you're plugging it on your television? Like, John Cena does all those Make-A-Wish things, and he doesn't just do them when WWE puts it on television. WWE puts it on television when he does things like milestone wishes, like a 500th wish or whatever the hell he's at. But it's like, that's basically what I'm saying here. You know what I'm trying to say here. It's a nice gesture. It's great of him to do it. I hope the Irish Boys Club was able to use that money for good and move on with their lives. But how much, I don't know what the hell I'm trying to say now. I got distracted by hockey. Because yes, while, talking about wrestling, I have a hockey game in the background. Anyway. So yeah, y'all know what I'm saying. I'm sure there's somebody in the comment section who's going to say, oh yeah, this is what Ari's trying to say. Thank you. So let's go to our first match here. It is Marty Lundy without headband versus Stagger Lee, or as most of you would know this match, Arn Anderson versus Junkyard Dog. Now, Arn last week, I never really thought of Arn Anderson as being somebody with a giant head. But apparently he must have, because last week, if you recall, he had a headband on. And it was stretched so tightly across his head that at first I thought it was a bandage that was covering up a cut, in a prior match. And it turned out to, nope, just a headband. So has he got a large head? Maybe it's just he got a headband that was a little too small for him and decided to wear it on TV once. So Stagger Lee clotheslined Marty, and Double A nearly fell on his head, and Lee won with the thumb, which the announcers did not pick up on. So Stagger Lee wins our first match. If there was anything else to say about it, I would. But yes, in our quest to prove that Stagger Lee and the Junkyard Dog are not the same person, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, they're using the same moves. And we will talk about how even more preposterous it is next week, and how basically the entire company is conspiring against Ted DiBiase and Matt Bourne, especially. Kamala with Friday and General Skandor Akbar versus King Cobra. Now, as we've mentioned in prior episodes over the past year or so, Mid-South has this fun thing where if your wrestling name is a gimmick name, they will put quotations on your name on your chyron here. Like Andre the Giant, the Giant would be in quotations. How King Cobra is in quotations. However, Kamala's name is not in quotations. telling you that Kamala's real name is Kamala. I should point out that Mr. Wrestling 2's real name is Mr. Wrestling 2. Apparently, Mr. and Mrs. Wrestling had a baby. They named him Mr., and because he was a junior, he was Mr. Wrestling 2. Anywho, so last week, Friday was wearing khaki-colored shorts that looked like he wasn't wearing any shorts at all. So the good news is he doesn't look naked this week because he traded in his khaki-colored shorts for camo shorts. So yippee! King Cobra got more offense than anyone against Kamala. And by more offense, I mean he got 2 drop kicks. Kamala jumped in the air to take over like, any, savage would do. He didn't come down with any offensive maneuver. He just jumped in the air. Kamala used a chop to the face. Roop brought up what we talked about last week, how DiBiase is in collusion with Kamala to get the mask off Stagger Lee. As at this point, we are down to our last 45 days that he has to get that mask off. And if he pulls off that mask on day 91, it's a day too late. So he has 45 more days roughly to get the job done. And Kamala got the job done here as he wins with 2 splashes to the back. Mr. Wrestling 2, again his real name, versus Yoshiatsu. And we have an update on the Mr. Wrestling 2 situation, as we've been mentioning in prior weeks. Somebody has it out for Mr. Wrestling 2. They have, Mr. Wrestling 2 has multiple masks. And apparently somebody has stole one of Mr. Wrestling 2's masks. They defaced it. They got it dirty. They got schmutz all over it. They may have painted on it. So Mr. Wrestling 2 has an update with this. Let's go to that right now. He's got something to tell Reeser.
Wrestling 2.
Mr. Reeser, let me just say one thing here, I got one of these things a couple weeks ago. All of a sudden, I've got another one. I just want to take up a minute of your time here. And it says here, Mr. Wrestling, this is your true color. And it's got a yellow streak down my mask. Let me tell you something right now. I don't know who you are, but you are messing up my life, my family, and I don't like it. You're stepping on my toes, pal. And let me tell you something right now. If you got any guts, come on out of the closet. Quit sending such goofy stuff as this and do it yourself if you think you're man enough.
Well, you, of course, can see how Mr. Wrestling 2 gets upset about something like that, and you can bet something is going to happen.
Rick Ferreira calls for the bell. Bob Roop, Reeser Bowden is right. A man really upset behind that mask. Mr. Wrestling 2 against the Japanese star from Tokyo, Yoshiatsu.
Well, I don't know what he was talking about there, Boyd. Apparently somebody's trying some psychological warfare on him, which that's one way to attack an opponent, and he's hard to attack from the front, let's face it.
All right. So Mr. Wrestling 2 pulls out a big note that was shoved on the front of his tights with a second mask. And the note basically just says that he's yellow. And they have the second mask with the stripe running down the front of it. And yeah, Mr. Wrestling 2 screamed that whomever is behind this needs to come out of the closet. Tell you what, that is a very personal thing. Personally, I just turned 39 years old a month ago. And it took me until I was 31 to come out of the closet. And I'll tell you what, Mr. Wrestling 2, I didn't come out of the closet because, I had, some big masked wrestler, some big goofy masked wrestler yell at me to come out of the closet. I came out of the closet because I wanted to, damn it. It's a pretty personal thing to be telling people to do this, and, that's not what you mean when you tell them to come out of the closet. My bad. I'm sorry, Mr. Wrestling 2. You're not goofy. You're a tremendous wrestler. You were a tremendous wrestler. I didn't mean to assume that you're trying to out anybody. You're just trying to get whomever it is that is, I don't know, do you just have like 1,000 masks or something that people just keep stealing? I don't know, is that a good, if people just keep stealing all your masks, is it a good idea to keep bringing extra with you? Although I guess maybe it is, because maybe, if you only brought one mask with you, someone would steal it, and thus you'd either have to come out maskless, or, you'd, you know, or you just wouldn't be able to wrestle that week and be able to make money and feed your family and all that, fun, happy horse shit. But so we'll see where this goes. And the next few months should be interesting in the life of Mr. Wrestling 2. As you mentioned, he is wrestling Yoshiatsu. Yoshi went for a super kick, but 2 cleverly sidestepped it and slapped on a headlock. If you like headlocks, the next couple of weeks of Mr. Wrestling 2 matches are the matches for you. Yatsu had no chance here. 2 hit his knee lift and then rolled Yoshi over, but then Kamala ran in. Let's go to that finish and the aftermath.
Looked like it was in the ropes there. The audience going crazy. Oh, there it is. Kamala's on the scene now. Referee calling for the bell.
Kamala calling for the bell. Kamala is in the ring.
He's attacking Wrestling 2 with those big chops. Attacking him, going after him. The referee can't do anything. Big double chop. Goes for that splash. He's got him. He's going for the mask. Wrestling 2 has never been unmasked. This might be the first time. He's going after that mask. The audience is going crazy. He's going after that mask. I can't see from here what it's Stagger Lee. He's in there. He's going after Kamala. Big punch. That big forearm. The junk. Oh! The thump. The thump. The junkyard dog thump. Stagger Lee. Nails the man Friday. Up. I don't believe it. Kamala's up. He's up from that thump. He caught him with a double chop. Caught him again. Splashes in. He's got him. He's going after the... Is he going? He's chopping. Big slam. Goes for the splash. Stagger Lee moves. Wrestling 2. Mr. Olympia's on the scene. Big drop kick. Kamala got hit with a thump. A big punch, a drop kick. He's on his feet again. Is this man indestructible? He got hit by Wrestling 2's knee, the big thump, a drop kick. He's facing all 3 of them. 3 of the top stars in professional wrestling today. And, oh, there's so many questions here. What is going on? Did he come down on his own? Did he go after that mask? Did Akbar send him? Rumor has it that Ted DiBiase is in collusion with Akbar to try to get the mask off Stagger Lee. Everybody knows that this man Kamala's collecting masks. Did he go on his own?
And as we try to calm things down and get our wits together, Bob Roop, we'll pause and be back with more action after this message.
Okay, so a lot happened here in 2.5 minutes, and let's break it down, shall we? So we get our finish. Mr. Wrestling 2 hits the knee. He's going for the pin, and Kamala runs in, and he's going for Mr. Wrestling 2's mask. And this is when Stagger Lee runs in for the save. Stagger Lee gets the best of him and hits the thump on Kamala because, we really have to wink at the crowd as to what's going on here. Stagger goes after Akbar and Friday, who are on the apron, which lets Kamala take over. Finally, all hell breaks loose as eventually Mr. Olympia and Mr. Wrestling 2 team up with Stagger Lee and run off Kamala and Yoshiatsu, who got back into it at that point. And actually, Kamala was holding more than holding his own for about a minute here. And finally, Kamala carries off Friday because I guess Friday did actually get hit. Now, whether this was actually supposed to happen or just something you weren't supposed to notice? I do want to point something out here, and we'll see if this plays into anything. While Kamala was going after Stagger Lee, Mr. Wrestling 2 is down in the corner. Mr. Olympia comes running out. Now, did he get in the ring and help out Stagger Lee? He did. However, it wasn't until Stagger Lee, actually, it wasn't until Wrestling 2 got back to his feet and began fighting back on Kamala. So Mr. Olympia, quote unquote, was there for the save, but wasn't really there for the save. Will this play out? I guess we'll have to see. But yeah, Mr. Olympia, Mr. Wrestling 2, Stagger Lee, that's a lot of masks. And we saw last week with Kamala and El Silencio, Kamala has been trained by somebody to go after masks. And if you're wearing a mask, he's going after you. So Rey Mysterio, everyone's turning on you on SmackDown, buddy. I know Kamala's passed away, but the spirit of Kamala, I know it wasn't there Kamala 2, like maybe Kamala 2 will come out and do something here. But I guess we'll see. Now I'm going to play the intro of our next match, our tag team match. And I want you to see I want you to see if you notice anything about the ring announcement by Reeser Bowden. Once he gets done, I'll come back, and if you haven't noticed something, I'll point it out to you. And if you have noticed it, I'll point it out to you too. But still.
It's tag team action now in a non-title event for one fall with a 10-minute time limit. In the red corner, the Mid-South Tag Team Champions at 268 pounds from Omaha, Nebraska, Ted DiBiase. And his partner at 240 pounds from Atlanta, Georgia, Matt Bourne. In the blue corner at 243 pounds, the Mississippi heavyweight champion, Mr. Olympia. And his partner at 278 pounds from Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, Iron Mike Sharp.
Talk about action getting out.
All right. Now, did you notice anything in that intro? Now, if you've been listening to us every week, you'll remember that Ted DiBiase is the North American heavyweight champion. Won the title a few months ago against Junkyard Dog, and then, he won the tag team titles a little bit ago, and he's been a double champion. However, it didn't get mentioned here. So you may not have, again, it's one of those things that it's like, hey, there's a lot being said, a lot being talked about. So if you didn't really notice it, you didn't really notice it. However, Stagger Lee does win the North American title at the Superdome, which was, like we said earlier, was the day after this show was taped. But 2 weeks before it aired, or a week and a half before it aired. You don't want to insult your audience. We're at the Superdome by mentioning DiBiase is still North American champion 2 weeks later. And you don't want to tip your hand to your most loyal audience, the 100 or so people that come out to the Irish McNeil Boys Club every week, by letting them know that Stagger Lee was now the champion instead of DiBiase. This will obviously play out next week. I don't know if they actually ever show the finish, but from how they describe it, it's pretty creative in one sense and bullshitty in another way. But, we'll get to that when we get to that. So we have a non-title match here. DiBiase and Olympia crisscrossed, and DiBiase went for a power slam, but Olympia dove into his arms with such strength and momentum that it essentially was a crossbody for a 2 count. Roop did ask some logical questions, like, was it Akbar solely who decided to go after Mr. Wrestling 2? Why did Kamala only use one splash to the back of Mr. Wrestling 2 before going after the mask? Since Kamala normally does 2, as we've seen against a lot lesser talent than Mr. Wrestling 2. And if he had done 2 splashes, would he have had the chance to rip off, Mr. Wrestling's mask? I guess that's something to discuss. So we mentioned Friday earlier had traded in his khaki shorts for camo shorts. Matt Bourne did not get the memo as he was wearing khaki tights this week. And so, yeah, it looked like he was naked here in 1982. But, unless you find Matt Bourne attractive, the good news is Matt Bourne was not naked here. Finish saw DiBiase and Olympia bonk heads. Sharp ran in and got held back by the referee. So Bourne came off the top with the move that would later be called the whoopee cushion when he's doink on Olympia behind the referee's back for the win. If you don't know what the whoopee cushion is, it's basically a diving sit-down splash from the top rope. It is what it is. Chavo Guerrero versus Bobby Jaggers. Again, Chavo Guerrero, for those who know how to spell his name. This match is brought to us courtesy of Channel 39 in Houston, Texas. Boyd pitches it to the Dean of Wrestling Commentators, Paul Bosch. I got my hopes up for Gordon Soley with that introduction, but alas. Paul Bosch is, I don't know what other people think about him. I don't know if, back in his day, he was pretty good. Paul Bosch is, I don't know. I'm not a fan of his commentary. And he says weird things. And next week, he's going to be on commentary for the entire show here next week. And he has a weird way of commentating. That's, I guess, all I'm going to say here for now. So Jaggers tried to, and I quote, rough Chavo into submission, but because Chavo was trained by his dad, Gory, from when he was first able to stand, Chavo was able to get out of a overhead wrist lock. Gotta say, I am mostly not a fan of these matches from Houston, even though they tend to be more competitive matches in Houston. There's no reason or story behind them. So we're getting a competitive match between one guy who's being pushed in Mid-South and one guy we will never see before or will never see again. With that said, this match was perfectly acceptable. Chavo wins with a Hurricanrana, which gets called a reverse head scissors with a victory roll, which technically isn't wrong, but it's a lot of words to use when Hurricanrana just works. This match was taped in Houston on November 19th, and as I said earlier, is the only time you'll see Jaggers wrestle in Mid-South Wrestling. We then get our women's match. It is Princess Victoria versus Leilani Kai. Now, typically we're used to poor Reeser saying weird shit when the women are wrestling. Famously, last time he was here, he talked about how pretty they were. And then, I think it was our first show, there was a mixed tag team match where a full-sized man and a small woman, in wrestling terminology in the day, referred to as midgets. And as we discussed, it's 2023. That's obviously not a phrase that is used in 2023, but it was the accepted colloquialism at the time and was used as a way to describe the type of wrestling we were watching. With that said, when this match came about, and I think it's the first episode of Mid-South that's on Peacock, so if you want to witness this, go check it out. This was when Reeser introduced the match as it's now time for the big men and the little girls, which just sounded so wrong. So wrong. Boyd at one point says Princess Victoria has more hair in her braids, because her hair is braided, than he has on the top of his head. And even if Boyd wasn't balding, it's one of those, I would hope so, since, the top of his head, especially 1982, a normal short-haired man versus a woman with long braids. So yeah, there's I guarantee a lot more hair on the head of Princess Victoria than on Boyd Pierce here. Okay, so now time for the story behind the title of this show. And as I say this, I may need to change the title of this show. It just sounds bad, but we'll get to that. If it's still called Ping Pong Revolution, that I decided to go for it. But so let's go to Bob Roop, who's gonna put over how great women wrestling is.
Years ago, people said, women wrestlers, ooh. Or I should say, they said women wrestling. But now today I keep reading in the sports paper about women playing football, women boxing, and of course for years there's been women jockeys, which jockey, believe me, getting run over by a horse 2 or 3 times. Robin Smith was crippled, and so these are sort of contact sports that women are now getting into, that the mainstream of American women, and yet there's been women wrestlers for several decades now, and so you'd have to say in this case, for all you people out there that might have questioned this, you'd have to say that these girls are progressive because they want to be athletes, and there's been very few avenues offered for women other than badminton or ping pong or shuttle tennis or something like that. And in the contact sports, like a few years ago, there was Women's Lib for Equality, and of course, although that amendment to the Constitution did not pass, women have wanted to be equal, and this is a case where they get a chance to prove it. Again, okay, to the match itself.
Okay, so remember when WWE did the Women's Evolution gimmick back in 2015, and they talked about how they were just as great as, the U.S. women's soccer team at the time and all that stuff. Michael Cole at no point had to go on TV and say, hey, women can now do more than just play badminton and ping pong. Women's Evolution was a really shitty branding idea that WWE had, instead of, just having good women's wrestling, or instead of just pretending good women's wrestling, we had to brand it. But for Pete's sake, Bob, but I defend Bob a lot on this show because, like I said, a lot of people really don't like Bob Roop for some reason. But when he's sitting here talking about women's equality, and now women can do more than just play shuttle tennis and ping pong and badminton. What the hell, dude? Like, really? Anyway, Roop then predicted intergender wrestling in some way. This is one of those The Simpsons predicted, the future. Bob Roop predicted the future by talking about how Leilani Kai could beat men who are the same size as she is. And, hey, a few years later, no one questioned it, even when they're not the same size. They actually had a better match. Like, here's the funny thing. This was one of the better matches we've seen on this show in months. Like, because even the competitive matches, like, they're just fine. But this was actually a good match. They got, 4 or 5 minutes. And, the crowd, to be honest, the crowd didn't really care all that much. It was the end of the second taping. And you just wait, by the way, the next set of TV tapings that will start next week, they taped 3 episodes to get it in before the end of the calendar year. So just wait till about 3 weeks from now. That crowd, I bet, will just be, sitting on their hands dead. Kai, by the way, misses a middle rope splash, and Victoria hit her middle rope crossbody for the win. Like I said, good match. It is not worth going out of your way to see, but it was good. Ain't nothing wrong with having a good wrestling match, even if it's with the women who, as we've seen, they only come in about once every 6 months or so, 4 to 6 months. and go from there. And we get our expiration of time match. It is the Louisiana champion Jim Duggan versus Mike Bond. It is the expiration of time match, but I imagine we are not going to the TV time limit here. They announced that next week Tony Atlas will be here, Chavo Guerrero will be here, Gino Hernandez will be here. Notably, they didn't mention any type of a main event match, but we're going to have a lot of names wrestling here next week. Duggan went for a backdrop and got kicked in the face. Roop theorizes that Duggan likes being hit and dares people to hit him. Duggan hits a body slam and a second body slam and the running spear for the win. Duggan, I know he's a heel, and even though they haven't really been together as a trio a whole lot, but Duggan is a heel and one of the biggest heel group in the company, with DiBiase and with Matt Bourne, but you haven't really seen them together much lately, so we'll see how that works. But the fans are behind Duggan despite being a heel. They're into his character. He's a little bit goofy. He's a little bit different. So Duggan wins his match, and he has something to say here to finish up the show.
Hacksaw Jim Duggan. That's Duggan. That's with 2 G's, so you can call it Duggan or Duggan, whichever way you like. A lot of time we refer to it in different manners, but it can be either way. Duggan with 2 G's or Duggan, and he makes his way to our way.
Something very wrong going on here. I'm telling you, Boyd Pierce, and you know too, Roop, Atlas don't have the guts to show his stinking face up here tonight. How come Tony Atlas isn't here tonight, huh? I want to know where that Atlas word is. I'll tell you why Tony Atlas isn't here. They don't have the guts. Next time Tony Atlas shows up in this ring, I want a match with him. You understand? Hacksaw Duggan wants a match with Tony Atlas next time he shows his ugly face in Mid-South on TV. I want him in that ring, and I'm going to tear you a new...
Now you hear Hacksaw Jim Duggan as he carried his campaign over. Earlier when he first came into the ring to Reeser Bowden, we could hear him over the ring microphone that he wants Mr. USA Tony Atlas. We've told you that next week Mr. USA Tony Atlas will be here. Now whether he has a match with Jim Duggan, I have no power or control over that, but he will be here next week. Popular Chavo Guerrero will return, and gorgeous Gino Hernandez. Bob Roop, we hope that the inevitable, eminent Paul Bosch, the promoter, a long time of the best of Texas wrestling in Houston, will be here. We appreciate your expert commentary this week as our guest commentator. A job well done. We appreciate you sticking to the facts, not promoting yourself, not using it as a sounding board, and I know the fan at home appreciate it.
Thank you, Boyd. What a program.
And
what a
ladies
program.
and gentlemen, you're responsible for making it what a program. We thank you so much for watching us every week. We're grateful to each one of you. Until next week at the same time, same channel, Boyd Pierce saying goodbye for Mid-South Wrestling.
All right, so some people in life don't need a microphone, and Jim Duggan is one of those people. He did not have a microphone. He was not on the headset, but him just yelling did the trick here. He says that Tony Atlas does not have the guts to show up. He wants a match with Tony Atlas. He wants Tony Atlas in the ring. And he basically says he wants to rip Tony Atlas a new asshole without saying the last word. And then because, Duggan's match went short, so I don't know how short it really went, and his promo only went so long, you heard Boyd having to kill the last 45 seconds of the show there. And that brought us to an end of our show. So we continue to roll here in Mid-South. Things are getting more and more interesting here at the end of 1982. We're almost into 1983. And actually, this is around the 1 year mark of Mid-South. It was the beginning of December 1982 that we started. And we're now at the beginning of December 1981 when we started. We're at the beginning of December 1982. And obviously, now for those of you who are new to our show and we're like, wait a second, you just said you had your 1-year anniversary show in August. How the hell is, that working? Well, it's because we took I had a co-host, the KJ part of our title. And then, I ended up taking a few months off because, I had to decide whether or not I want to continue the show, and ended up coming back solo. And, for like the first months, I didn't even do Mid-South. I think I did Winter is Coming the last time AW did Winter is Coming. And I did a couple other things. And then I decided to go back to Mid-South. Mid-South is fucking great. But yeah, in case you're curious how we just finished 1 year Mid-South, when 15 months into a podcast, that's how we do it. And also, in case you're wondering how 15 months equals 66 episodes, that's a discussion also for some other time too. It is what it is here, folks. So anyway, that's it for Mid-South Wrestling. So we go to our favorite segment. It is Weird News of the Week. And that is Weird News of the Week, presented by Nobody, the company that sponsors nothing. And for that, we go to UPI.com. We go to our old friend Ben Hooper, and we have this week's weird news. Toy Hall of Fame inducts Cabbage Patch Kids and baseball cards. The National Toy Hall of Fame in New York announced its inductees for this year are baseball cards, Cabbage Patch Kids, the Fisher-Price Corn Popper, and Nerf. The Hall of Fame, part of the Strong National Museum of Play in Rochester, New York, said the Fisher-Price Corn Popper was chosen by popular vote from a special field of forgotten 5 toys. The other 3 inductees were chosen from 12 finalists, including Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Battleship, Choose Your Own Adventure books, and Ken. Christopher Bench, Vice President for Collections and Chief Curator at the museum, said each toy inducted this year brings its own unique form of play. Baseball cards encourage lifelong playing and collection, he said. Cabbage Patch Kids continue to encourage imagination and storytelling for kids. Fisher-Price Corn Popper, which is a forgotten finalist, no longer is a great activity for toddlers. Nerf toys are designed for indoor and outdoor activity, and they often find kids and grown-ups playing together. So great inductees here to the Toy Hall of Fame. And I'm, one of the reasons I was going through the weird news archives, one of the reasons I looked at this is because earlier today, as I'm recording this, KJ and I went to our local mall where there's a store called the Toy Vault, and we were talking about some of the old toys they had in it, and a lot of things they had. In fact, some of the stuff they had there was baseball cards and football cards, basketball cards, etc. And I mentioned how I had thousands of those things growing up, and much like with a lot of my other toys, I wish I wouldn't have gotten rid of my childhood when I did. Damn. Not saying any of them were ever worth anything, but now it's kind of like, it would have been interesting to still have them and see if I could have gotten anything out of them. But anywho, I guess that's going to be that here for this week's show. Hey, we went about 40 minutes, so, more than 30, so that's always good. Next week's going to be the fun show, I think, because next week we have it's going to be a light show next week on something else. It's going to be one of those weeks where I have to figure out ways to extend the damn show out. But that's going to do it for this week. I want to thank you all for listening. And we're going to end the show the way that we end the show every week, with me going, man, let's load. There we go. Thank you all for listening, and I'll talk to you again. Maybe in 6 days. See you again next week.